that? Meeting to order, Historic Preservation Commission, August 28th.
You might need to get a little closer to your microphone.
August 28th, how's that? Thank you.
Or September.
September 28th, thank you.
25th.
Wrong month. Okay, so we'll have a roll call. Les Barber,
Here.
Gail Nader. Will,
Here.
John Sampen here. John Wade. Thank you. Has everybody had a chance to glance at the minutes? Any, Heather, by the way, I should mention that Gail is not able to be here today because of her mother. Is that correct? Her mother is ill. So we're sorry about that, and we'll struggle on without her. I know Gail has perhaps a lot of updates, which we'll have to catch up with later. Okay, so if we could have a motion to approve the minutes or to amend them.
On a couple of amendments, on, after my name, you could probably put via Zoom, because I was via Zoom also since John,
Oh,
you were
okay.
also.
Thank you, yeah.
Via Zoom. And the other thing on page 2, in the second paragraph, like the fourth line up, there's a HPZC. So there's a Z need deleted. I didn't-
Where is it?
In the second paragraph, it's the fourth line up. It says better suited to the aims of the HPZC. Z and X, I don't think the Z's
You're right.
right. I wasn't sure. I thought maybe that
Oh,
was.
yeah. I spot that too. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
yeah, I thought, I wasn't sure. I thought maybe
But
there
it was
was an
too late to
HPZC.
correct it.
Good.
What do we do? Just,
You could note it on the minutes,
yeah, okay.
still
Okay.
sign them.
All right.
Looks good.
Great.
John has the copy.
Any other concerns, amendments to the minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the August
Okay.
25th, 28th, 2020 minutes.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Minutes are approved. Okay. Historic Preservation Ordinance Review. Continuing onward with our review of the ordinance. Who would like to begin discussing this?
Just ask that maybe that we start by clarifying our understanding of Mike Marsh's ruling. Because it seems to me that not what we were so much hoping it was.
Right.
That he's really, if I read it correctly, he's talking about parcel, platting parcel. And I think that was Gail's original question. In our case, for example, we own a house at 303, the property at 303 North Prospect actually has 2 parcels. The original main parcel and a little parcel behind that church on Oak Street. So the question I thought Gail was asking is, would somebody like me get 2 votes? Because if I
You
had 2
should.
parcels.
I wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't
Probably
think
like
so.
one address or one property.
And I think that's what Mike was,
His seemed
because he
like it.
uses the word parcel in his statement.
I thought I forwarded you his email that
Yeah, you
says
did.
1 vote per property owner is what I have consistently said, not per parcel, not per property, not per anything else. So if you owned 100 parcels, you get 1 vote. That's how I read it.
And I'm not sure I'd agree with that, but I mean, that's what's legal.
I mean, again, that this
Yeah.
verbally, he's told me that, and then when I asked him to
Yeah.
write it 2 different times,
But
Saw
if you
that.
own two separate properties,
Then
then you're
you,
gonna get two votes.
2 votes.
Well,
That's
why
how I read it, one
Yeah,
vote
that's
per
why-
property owner.
I read
Yeah,
it
how I
like
said it.
you'd get one. I don't agree.
And I think he seemed pretty adamant on his follow-up is one property vote, 1 vote per property owner. If somebody owns 6 buildings downtown, that's still only 1 vote is how I interpret it.
Let's find
Have you
it.
seen something else other than this thing that Heather sent us? Just that-
Mike's email that followed right after that.
Mhm.
Heather, you know,
Yeah, but it's just 2 lines. Says, my opinion, the proposed ordinance provides for 1 vote per property owner, not 1 vote per parcel.
Well,
That's
that would make it, then. That would
hopelessly
make it,
ambiguous,
that would make it then, if you had 10 properties, you'd get 10 votes.
yeah, which is what we had been assuming
Yeah,
would be the case.
And I don't read it that way at all. It says per property owner, not per parcel.
Yeah,
What-
but by saying not per parcel, he's putting it in the context of the question about more than 1 parcel.
Hey, attorneys can interpret things differently, just like us. I mean, if you want to sit down with him, I'd encourage you to sit down and have an appointment. Because like I said, I've asked 3 different times and he
Really?
feels like he's being very clear. So I don't know what else I can do to give you
Okay,
clarity.
No, it's okay. I mean,
So-
I'm concerned about this, so
Yeah, no, I
okay with
would,
you if I call him?
absolutely,
What,
yeah.
what is the date of that, that correspondence from?
September 11th.
Okay.
Yep.
Want to find that and clarify in my own mind. I know it is confusing and if you're willing to make that phone call and just,
Yeah, I will.
either way, do we need that in writing from Mike?
And he's gonna say he's did that now
already-
twice.
So that was his
I am
in
just
writing.
relaying what I've been told.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Heather.
Yep.
But I think that is something we need to all know and have clarified just for our own peace of mind.
No, property owners are going to want.
Yeah,
No, they're gonna wanna know, yeah.
absolutely. Okay, so that will be the first thing to check out. So what all do we have here, Heather? I haven't looked at all my handouts. Revised draft from Les. Another proposed full document, is that correct? Is that?
Yeah, that's the thing that I sort of calling a special amendment.
Okay,
That basically changes 15807A.
that's this,
Yeah.
this
Well,
one.
no, that's
Okay,
the actual ordinance that,
we're talking about the revised. Okay, this is the
no,
ordinance.
the one that looks like this revised special.
Okay,
But Heather has made us some changes in this too, and I think they're,
Since your
Fine,
last
but
meeting, I
should
just
we,
made those
don't
updates.
know whether we should just make sure everybody's in agreement.
should we, yeah, I think we should check through these, especially the items in yellow, which I assume are the changes, is that right?
Yeah, but before we get to that, you might want to just look at this one,
Okay,
and I think she's highlighted the changes there too. Is that right, Heather? They're in bold, maybe, or,
in the full document, do we have,
I don't remember besides ones that I had questions
okay,
or ones that I took it upon myself to fix, like for
Yeah.
example, how we reference the standards.
right?
That's what I wasn't sure how you wanted to do that. I just kind of picked a way I thought made sense and changed the whole document that way. So that's the only other thing I would say I fixed.
The others were there's an editorial change on page 4, which she's just added an or that should be there. Purely editorial as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and that was a comment you made from last time.
Oh, was it?
Yes, yep,
Oh, okay,
Yep.
forgot.
yep.
And
Format of this, the spatial amendment doesn't match 15807 on page 10.
yeah, it's
Of the
because,
revised.
well, that's my fault, because I didn't run off another copy. I'm using an old copy, so the page numbers probably don't work.
But I mean, the page 10, well, we got the draft, the September 10th copy, that's the latest, right? And then these are like a proposed changes to that what
No,
we'd received a September 10th.
is it okay with you, John? if I
Yes,
keep-
please.
We haven't gotten to that one yet, Will. We're just looking at some changes that are made in the base document. Then we'll get to that special amendment thing.
Okay,
That's,
because I was looking at the formats. The 15807 format's different than,
Okay,
I think that'll become clear when we get to that,
okay.
I hope.
so for anyone that
not,
might,
then-
that might be watching us, we are getting close to the final stages of our document, proposed modifications for the Historic Preservation Commission. And Les particularly has been working hard with Heather to clean up and just revise certain sections of our document. And so we're just wanting to be sure that we're all on the same page as far as what has been changed.
Yeah.
Okay, so Les, you want to take
Okay,
over?
so I'm just looking through here, and the other changes that Heather's made are all just changing the standards to, changing what I had written out the whole thing, Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, and she's suggested just changing that to the standards, which I think makes perfect sense. So there are several of those. I don't think we need to look at them.
Okay,
But the one that I thought was substantive is in existing, this is page 11 on mine. It's 15807A 11.
okay,
And Heather has suggested getting rid of the word color. And I think in this particular case, color is still appropriate.
Okay, I just want to make sure because we talked about color several times of not wanting to regulate color. So it seemed it
Color
was
if
kind of the
you're
opposite
doing
of,
any change to your whole property. But if you're doing an addition, I think that it should be, what's the phrase here? Should be compatible with the color.
up
And
to
then,
you all.
and then if the person wanted to change the color of the whole thing, he or she would be free to do that. But when an addition is made that's non-historic, there ought to be in my view, there should be compatibility in all of these respects: size, scale, color, material, and character of the property.
I'm fine either way on
Just
that.
in other words, color consistent with the main building.
Mhm.
I tend to think that especially downtown, that needs.
Good, well, I think that's particularly important to think about what the downtown people might, at least the historical preservation people might be concerned about, so thank you.
Yeah, because I think certain colors that are like in old buildings. I mean, we got colors today that we wouldn't, like neon green or something, we wouldn't see.
Yeah.
old-
So,
Colors is important.
so are we agreed to leave color in?
I think
That's okay?
Okay.
All right?
Yeah, I say be consistent because me sitting here for all these months, I did not gather that from any of you. So obviously that's why I thought to remove that. So I think we just need to be really careful going forward. Especially in the FAQs, because I remember saying, y'all saying we're not doing it color, not doing color. And that's why obviously it popped in my head. So
This is not a change in the historic property. This is change, this has only to do with an addition that's made, not historically. Okay, everybody is comfortable.
Mhm.
And then the only other thing is that I think we agreed there will be an appendix of the Secretary of the Interior's standard of 4 sets.
And I still don't know what to do with that. I haven't had a chance to look at it closely, but if it's over 200 pages, but you didn't want 200 pages in
The
our document,
standards-
right? Okay,
Standards will be 1 page per.
okay, that's
per
what I
set of
haven't
skits, so there'll
found
be
yet
4
to,
pages.
okay,
Just to, I have them here, but they have these color
okay.
pictures, and I don't know that we want the colored pictures in the document.
But how did you get to that point? Did you have to cut and paste? Is that what you did from
I
online?
just figured out what the pages were.
Okay,
I counted the pages, because unfortunately, they don't number the pages. I counted the pages and then just ran off the pages that corresponded to the. I'm sure there's a better way of doing it for people who are more agile.
maybe you can email me a copy of that, because
Good.
like I said, I only saw the full document and I wasn't sure, and I didn't have time to do much more else with it.
Okay,
Would
so,
would
so-
we need to if it's free, like if you included like a URL for the actual document?
Mhm.
That'd be adequate, so somebody.
well, we have done that. The
Since it is
URL
free,
is in
it's-
there, but I think it would be important to have them physically
Maybe
there
so.
so that, builder X comes in and says, hey, what are these
Yeah.
standards? Well, there they are, right there.
Makes it handy.
And since it's only 4 pages, that's a big,
I do too. One of the things, I've got the historic design guidelines, for Perry, and I found out that those are available in the library. Got a complete set available in the library. Know about it. Talking about it. Exactly what Les is talking about. Especially those of us who are somewhat technically challenged.
I think the only danger is as those potentially are changed, them not necessarily being reflected right away in the code. That's a downfall, but
well,
It
these
is what it
standards
is.
haven't changed in 30 years or something.
oh, I thought it was
and-
more recent than that, but okay.
No, the standard, the guidelines, the guidelines have changed, but the standards are exactly the same since
Hmm.
1990, whenever they first created it.
The-
Well, I don't think there's much chance that those are gonna change. The so-called guidelines, they've increased those tremendously. They're page after page after page.
Okay, we agreed.
Okay,
All right.
so you need something more from me other than,
If you could maybe
I-
scan that document, or I can make a copy of it before you leave.
I think I can scan them and, okay, scan them and send them to you.
Perfect, okay, that'd help me.
Excellent. Okay, Les, you want to,
Yeah, let me make a note of this first, what I
Sure,
just agreed
sure.
to do.
Heather, I like having this big copy of the,
Yeah.
I tried printing the small map and
Mhm.
boy, I could not tell anything. Oh, that's great. The map of the Boomtown and the downtown historic district.
Okay, so then the next step would be to look at my proposed so-called special amendment. This one-page sheet that Heather gave you. 2 pages. One sheet. This we discussed briefly at the last meeting, and it was agreed that everybody would look at it more carefully, and we decide today whether to do it or not.
And the revisions are in yellow,
The
correct?
revisions that you didn't see last month are in yellow.
Okay,
Although I also got rid of some things. I had that, I got rid of some
Some of
things.
that,
some
some of the
didn't.
itemizing,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's not reflected.
So should we read through these? Do you think that would be helpful?
Could be. Everybody, does everybody understand that the basic idea is to get rid of any reference in the document to specific guidelines that we will be creating? And also any attempts, no, we already dealt with that, sorry, not that. It's to get rid of the rewritten versions of the Secretary of the Interior's standards. Because those items I listed here, items 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, we're all just rewritten versions of 9 or 10 of the Secretary's standards.
What's
The
your,
idea was to clarify things by having only one.
you're proposing that this would replace the old
The
Old section A.
158.07A.
Yeah.
that had the 13?
Right.
Okay, I get it.
And it leaves in the 3, I think there are 3 that are fully our own. On the one sheet in front of you, that's number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 7 about landscaping. Boy, I'm saying this all. Saying this all right again. It leaves in a couple of the original ones that were fully our own, including that number 7 about landscaping, but replaces all of the others with what's.
And you've just, in some of these you have condensed and reworded, just to make it
Yeah,
a little less wordy and
Yeah,
more
I did
of
that.
our document.
but it still contains a number of examples of certain kinds of situations where we would be flexible, or we would allow non-historic materials. One example was downtown roofs, for example, that are above the streetscape. Or what a downtown business owner does with his roof or her roof is not really a matter for the HPC to be involved in, I would argue. And I think, as I thought about this, I realized we talk in our ancillary materials all the time about being flexible, but the document itself never, except on the issue of color, painting, it never offers any specificity about where we would be flexible. I thought it's really important to put in some examples. Partly because in the short run, we want our stakeholders to feel comfortable with what we're doing. We want to try to answer as many of the obvious questions that they're going to ask as possible. And in the long run, to guarantee more consistency over time with how different HPCs will interpret the document. You know, we couldn't give every example. There's no way you could do that because we can't anticipate them. But these seem to be like the most obvious ones: windows, siding, roofs. You know, those are going to come up all the time. So get them in. Hopefully, they would serve as guideposts for future HPCs to use in determining where to be flexible with the standards.
I have a question. I've
I'm sure you do, since Making it sound confusing.
No,
That's
no,
why.
you're not, but part of, I'm thinking specifically in that I've looked at these Perrysburg standards. I think about our downtown. There are some buildings over here at original front paint. Now we've got vertical siding.
Covered up
on
the
front
original.
Yeah.
building. And so I can certainly understand that if a building owner has a piece of vertical siding that needs to be replaced, okay, doesn't want to redo the whole thing. But in the case of where somebody comes in and says, you know what, we're going to redo the whole building, I think that the preference, take the vertical siding off and restore the original front, if all possible. The way I read this, saying basically, go ahead, we want to stay out of that completely. Maybe I'm overstepping. I don't know.
No, I
That's
don't think
why-
so.
That's why I'm asking.
Okay, so
know-
it says something about that.
As I read this, it says, exterior sightings on exterior walls. Okay. So again, we've got some buildings that I think probably fall into this area that have what I know as T111. And I'm assuming underneath that is brick front.
Public.
Right.
Cast
Yeah.
iron columns.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the last full paragraph on the side one, John, is meant to address that. If a full replacement of a non-historical feature, that would be an example,
Thank you. Yes, that clears.
is desired or is necessary, the owners will be required to apply for a COA
Okay.
before begin. And if possible, replace with features which move in the direction of greater historical accuracy.
Okay.
I didn't feel that we could go as far as saying you have to do it, but
Okay.
you
No,
certainly have to
that's-
move.
Yeah.
in that
Somehow it's
direction.
even like getting examples of someone that's done it. I actually did that on a building in Colorado Springs, this original section of old Colorado City. When I worked at Urban Renewal there, and it was their west side office. And it was a building and it was exactly like I said, it was covered up with, I think it had been a pharmacy, it was covered up with plywood and the T111 and things. And ended up taking that all off and exposing the cast iron beams and columns and sunk the entrance wall back about 5 foot. Looked like Easy Street with the bricks and things. And I think it really, the purpose was to get that whole section to start doing that. So if you have an example like where someone could be encouraged to look underneath that and see what's under there before you just come back and replace the T111 because it rotted a little bit.
Yeah, well, this is supposed to address that.
Okay.
It would give the HPC the opportunity to jawbone with the owner. The owner might say, well, I don't have enough money to do a perfect job, but I'll go this far. Maybe the HPC says, okay, maybe they don't, I don't know. I mean, we
But
can't
it
say.
would help protect someone taking, say, like a nice historic facade and then covering it up with
Yeah,
T111.
right.
I mean, that's,
Yeah, they definitely couldn't do that.
yeah, that's good. That's,
Okay. I'm satisfied.
Thank you.
Yes. Good.
Well, I think it shortens that area, that section, and maybe is a little more friendly to read. And I like the features of not being too heavy-handed with the requirements, which I think is one of our goals for this round of.
like suggestive.
Right. Do we cover all the points that have been already left out of the original? I'm assuming.
Well, we didn't talk about them specific. And number 2, I put in because it just seems like a wise precaution.
Number 2.
Number 2 on this
okay.
single sheet,
Uh-huh.
to say if there is some apparent or real discrepancy that we're not thinking of right now, the ordinance takes precedence over the standard. I think is what we would want. So we didn't talk about that, but the 3, we've just been talking about 3, especially the last paragraph of it. And then
3, I do have
4,
a concern about listing signs because signs are regulated by the zoning code.
okay.
So that might be something we don't want to touch right away because that's a whole other section that's already
I
regulated.
just put it in because I thought maybe downtown business owners would like to see that. But if it makes for greater confusion, then we shouldn't do it. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. You know more about it than I.
Yeah, I'm just looking at what's your intent. Anytime somebody replaces a sign, they're gonna have to go get a COA. What's the intent behind listing signs?
I think that here, if we follow the logic of this, if they are just repairing a sign, that's their business. If they're replacing a sign, then the HPC gets a crack at saying what the replacement will be.
Again,
Presumably, we would argue you should try to go back to what is most historically accurate. But, it's the 21st century. People need signs.
I mean, that alone, you'd be very busy with the amount of signs I
that
have.
right?
Well, just picture downtown and how businesses change so rapidly. And what you all may think is historically significant or needs to stay may be in strict opposition to the sign code. I'll give you an example. We just had a profile sign for trotters get approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals, which, some could argue that is a historically significant sign. Profile signs were very common, but our zoning code does not allow those right now, so you have to get a variance. So and to add not further confusion, but we're updating our zoning code, and I anticipate that there will be some changes to the sign code too. So I just think it's a very, what's the word? It's a complicated area of the code, and I think when you start getting into that, you might just get into some things that are in opposition of our actual sign code.
why don't we consider just striking signs? I mean, we say such features may include, and
Yeah.
we can always update our standards if that's felt at some point like it's a big problem.
I have no argument against
No,
removing
no,
the,
okay.
there are 2 references to signs that I think we can.
Okay.
I mean, one part of me says I would like future HPCs to have some say in that issue, but if it's more complication than it's worth,
But if it says with in-kind material, that basically say if you're gonna replace what you have with what you already there, it's okay. Something different. Now it's a different ballgame. That would be my interpretation of that. Reason I asked.
this is the replacement of small sections of deteriorated awning signs, et cetera, as long as it's in kind. But if it were a complete replacement, the way this is written, then the
Yes.
HPC would.
Yes.
Would require a COA, would be discussion.
Yeah.
And maybe
Okay.
negotiation.
I mean, if we got too busy looking at signs, we can always delete it. I mean, but it might be
Well,
good
and
to-
just put yourself in the business owner perspective. They want to open.
Yeah.
Signage is very critical. Now they need to get an administrative review under the zoning code. Then they may need a variance from the zoning board of appeals, and then they may need to come get a COA from you all. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is the kind of issues we deal with. That's a long time for someone to wait
Hmm.
to get their signage and then get it under production from a sign company. Like, you just have to put, I think you have to be
No.
really careful to put yourself behind, the lens of that person wishing to open their business, which is very critical.
Right.
So I just want you to be aware, signs are very complicated and I
Yeah.
deal with them almost every day. And I just think you're adding a
Take
really
it out
big
for right-
layer
Take it out
of,
for now and
it's just my personal opinion and what I deal with in the office. Now, where's this other reference to signs on this sheet
Yeah,
or?
on this sheet.
Okay.
It's just in the next sentence.
Oh, thank you. I did not circled that one.
My thought in keeping it is that exactly what you're talking, you got somebody new coming in, believe me, I don't want to stand in their way. I want them involved, I want to help them, I want them coming into bowling, helping build downtown. But I also want to be concerned that somebody doesn't come in and put up some sign that mars in front of a building that less than terrible. Realize I'm getting out saying, okay, have to, but I mean, I'm being honest, that's what the thought is.
No, and I'm being honest too, and
So-
people get very frustrated
I'm
that
sure
they,
they do.
and what if zoning board approved something and then it came to HPC and you're like, wait a minute, I don't like this. So then how does it make the city look for continuity and consistency that one board says yes,
Yeah,
one board says no? Like, I'm just trying to think out
Right.
what that
Oh,
process
yeah.
looks
Yeah, the
like.
bureaucratic part, it would be a mess.
So-
Right,
so-
right, and it would not flow smoothly at all, so I'm just trying to think out what that looks
Okay.
like. Because
So-
we're working under two different codes here
Okay.
that are already in writing, and I'm trying to figure out what that needs to look like or be updated.
If
I
we
would
got
think-
rid of the word sign now, it just kicks the can down the road. Because it's only here as an example, not a rule. They're things like. So if we get rid of it, it just leaves it an open question to be dealt with. I don't know, the city, maybe the city might want to consider finding a way of getting HPC recommendations involved in signage at some earlier stage so that it
Historic.
doesn't put the extra bureaucratic burden on.
Well, I would
This
hope
is-
the city is, council will be approving this, of course, we hope. And they will be behind us and will be aware and concerned about our concerns. So, you know, can we presume that we're all working together? I don't know. I hope so. We could give that a try.
I think it
Yeah.
needs a lot more thought. I'm just trying to think it
So
out of
leave
what that
in,
looks
so leave
like.
it in for now.
Leave it in or take it out?
I would think in the end, the city ordinance is gonna win out anyway.
I mean, we're looking at the size and location.
Yeah.
Essentially, under the zoning code,
So-
and how many signs, and, you know, I'm just trying to think it out, what it would look like, if somebody would need a variance because of the zoning code, it doesn't comply. That's probably when it gets the messiest, quite honestly, and that happens more often than not.
Okay?
Can we just
Yes.
think about it more, or, I mean,
No,
I'm
let's
trying to
decide.
think.
Let's
I
make a
would say,
decision.
to me, the smartest thing for us to do right now is to take it out, and take the reference out.
We can,
As I say, that kind of kicks the can down the road.
But we can always re-amend our document at some
we
point.
Good.
can, especially if you see signs come up that deteriorate the historic value of surrounding buildings.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it would require, I think, elaborate reconsideration of the sign part of the code and with
Yeah.
reference to historic preservation. Maybe that's a separate issue.
Yeah.
I'm just
Good idea.
afraid we could probably go into
And
more
maybe we should put
detail
that
on
our
every one of
agenda
the-
sometime.
every one of these little things. And I think we've been doing this for a long time. We want to push this forward if we can. So am I sensing that we're taking it out? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Would there be any interest in the commission's saying that we would like to consider this at a future, as a future agenda item at some point to discuss whether there is some efficient way of getting historic preservation into the
Signage.
signage?
Uh,
We could even look at the existing signage ordinance just to see what it has. Could relate to.
Yeah,
history.
I think that's a good idea. I think we could put that on our future agenda once we push this through? Have a meeting with the council perhaps?
Is that problematic, Heather, in any way to?
I don't think so. Like I said, we're doing a zoning code update right now. It's just a very involved project, and sign code is going to be a piece of it, obviously, but there's a lot of other moving parts in that one, so that works though.
Okay, let's look at the other, I'm looking at item 6. Are those details that we need to discuss? It looks like they're just kind of wording changes there. Les, are you,
6.
yeah,
6 is,
rehabilitation,
yeah, that's,
historical detail, just,
it's actually not much change. Yeah,
Okay.
it's just minor little changes. It's basically what it was when you saw it the last time.
so if we approve this amendment, then letter A in the original will be deleted and this will be inserted, correct?
Correct. And you will be deleting the first sentence of,
Letter B,
yeah, of B1, the
okay.
first sentence of B1.
Are we prepared to take a vote? John says yes. Will, are you, okay? Could I have a nomination to, not a nomination, but a
Motion?
proposal to accept the revisions, the special amendment as put forth by Les?
With the deletion of sign,
Pardon me?
with the deletion of sign.
With the deletion of
Signs.
and
as
signs or
amended, yeah.
signs, correct.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Okay,
All right.
so where does that bring us on our document? Other revisions that we need to look at? I think we've
I
talked,
think that's it. You've got,
Thank you for all you.
Yeah.
yeah,
oh, come on.
terrific.
Sometimes I think I've been meddling too much, but then at other times I think that because I was on that original commission, I was in the best position of anyone to try to take some leadership on this particular
Yeah,
topic.
that's great.
Appreciate what you've done.
Anyway, thank you.
So Heather, what's our next step here? Are we
Well, I
ready?
have more amendments to make,
You have some?
right?
Oh.
I mean, no, I meant per your, what we just passed or what you just passed.
Oh,
To,
yeah,
It
to
needs
insert
updated.
to
them.
work them into the,
Right.
So we'll have to see that.
so do we want to see one more document then? And hopefully by then we can get the appendix in too, and so
Right,
then we should have a clean thing for us to review.
right.
And then does it have to go back to the state? Is that right? Or does that come after this council?
No, that wouldn't come till after because you need that council ordinance
Then they,
passed to
then
be
the
a,
state
right,
has to
Mhm.
also approve it.
Right.
Okay. Okay, and we're just on hold about that until we're past COVID times.
So I'm just thinking of a timetable here. We had talked about not having a meeting next month, but I'm sure it would be nice to pass this on to council for their deliberation. And maybe we could have a vote without having a meeting. I mean, or we could take a vote now pending those amendments.
Well, if you recall, there was quite a bit of stakeholder conversations that you discussed last time before giving this to council. And the prep document that Les was working on.
I think that maybe we don't need, I don't know, this is just a thought. Maybe we don't need any additional formal votes. We have voted on every amendment. So in effect, we have approved the document that Heather is going to show us. And only if somebody spots something that we didn't think should be there,
A
would we,
typo or
would we
something.
need to have any further votes? What do you think? And that would allow us then to go ahead with planning about informal meetings with the mayor and Colin Baugh and stakeholder groups, et cetera. I think is our next big agenda
Okay,
issue, actually. Is that,
Would be to get it out to them to look at, even before
yeah,
council.
and maybe even meet with them if we can arrange it in these, these virtual reality days.
so Les, you put together a series of projected goals and plans. Maybe you could just talk through that with us. As far as a timetable for all this.
Does everybody have that copy? Okay, I
Yes.
think I made extras, so.
Okay, so, yeah, I think that would be okay, because this issue of the meetings with stakeholder groups, et cetera, will come up there. So, yeah, okay. Is that the next agenda item? Public engagement plan,
Right.
we don't have anything because
Informal,
Gail is not here, right?
informal engagement with stakeholder groups, that's the next, under number 3.
Okay. All right, well, if we're talking about 3B, then we're not talking about the projected goals and plans.
Oh, okay. Am I,
That's a separate agenda.
pardon
item.
me, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, so informal engagement with stakeholder groups. I don't have details on our plans. Maybe that's just up for discussion.
Yeah, we don't have plans yet. But I think it's really important that we have plans. And maybe if we have a general sense of what those plans are today, we don't necessarily have to meet every month. If we authorize the Gail or the officers to go ahead and arrange meetings, we don't have to have a full commission meeting to do that. It's not efficient. Again, maybe I'm talking too much, but I made a little list of the things that I think need to be done or that are in the pipeline. We have a transmittal letter that we've approved.
Mhm.
That's something that we could show to council, for example. We've talked about redoing a flyer. There was one that Heather sent us that was done for the 2014-15.
Right.
It would need some revision, but that's probably a good idea. That's something that we don't need a commission meeting to do. That would have to be assigned to somebody to work on. But then after that, I think that it would be very smart of us to arrange some kind of meeting with the mayor and his two, I've lost my words here. What's Lori?
Administrator,
Yeah,
municipal administrator.
administrator and Joe. Meeting with the mayor, Lori and Joe, because they're going to be pretty critical that all three of them are kind of like feeling good about this. I don't think the mayor alone is quite enough. If Lori's not happy, then the mayor is eventually not going to be happy either.
To give them a copy of the revised
So we'd give,
ordinance
yeah, presumably we'd give them a copy of the,
and set up a meeting here sometime for them to come. Is it
yeah,
easier
I
for the
don't know whether,
the mayor to meet here versus over in the mayor's office?
Yeah,
Yeah, or here.
anywhere you want.
whether there would be other questions like, should it be the whole commission? Should it just be Gail, I don't know. I don't know that we should decide that now, but we make somebody
Be kind of
responsible for
interested, maybe just
deciding.
as a commission, just to hear the mayor's thoughts, like once he's seen the ordinance and see if he sees there's any things that need tweaked in it.
But I
or-
think there needs to be back and forth, you know.
That would be a meeting.
clarification,
You-
and
Majority were together, that's a meeting then.
Ideally, in better times, it would be easier to arrange these things than right now. I think that's vital.
Well, what if we just schedule a meeting for next month with the mayor, if we can arrange a time when he's available and his assistants.
Maybe that's the
Um,
way to go.
I mean,
Give them the paper.
exactly.
Give
yeah,
him everything we have that would be useful.
Yeah.
Has questions on it or things we've felt maybe need to,
And it can be our official meeting time and
We
it can
wouldn't,
be
we
open.
wouldn't need the flyer necessarily for that meeting, so that would take longer to develop.
But
so-
we could also get his advice on a future flyer or suggestions for how to proceed and involve the public.
I have a question. I don't know if this is appropriate time, but I think it does dive with these boundaries that are on here. Those boundaries be looked at or we get farther along. From a brief discussion I had, I get the impression boundaries somewhat area moved. I don't know if that's correct.
I guess it can be.
It might be, I don't know about that.
I
but-
mean, this is the Boomtown boundaries, right? So it doesn't have to, we could vote to expand or make it smaller, I'm sure. We could do whatever we want.
who
I-
set, who
The
set
the main
boundaries?
point right now, John, is I think that what we're talking about now has really nothing to do with that.
Well,
That's
I'm
a separate step.
I'm wondering though, if when people come in and they want to say, well, what's going on? And then after we say, well, now we want to look at the boundary too. I would think that when the mayor comes in, he is prepared to give all the information and not move something later. That's my thought. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but
I know our original plan was to start with these two districts and then revise, expand perhaps, or reduce. I don't think we're going to reduce from that.
I still, because of Mike Marsh's, my interpretation of Mike, still feel that it's best to put together. Okay. And I could be all wet.
Mhm.
But
my
no, I think
thinking
it
is
absolutely needs to be discussed.
you
I
put
think
it
it's a
all
very-
together in one, not two separate districts. And part of the reason why I look at that too is that I know that this downtown area that's drawn on here, there's a couple of buildings that I think that are right on the fringe that I think would definitely be yes. So even if it only moved one property, okay, in two directions here, I think we pick up two more votes to say yes, good. And I don't know how critical that is. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know how many property owners there are. Two property owners are gonna make a difference. But I know one of them, yes, our building, not in here, it's right on the fringe.
And should it be? You think it should? Yeah.
I'd be happy if it was.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to participate and support downtown bowling. So that's why I look at it, I kind of wonder if we should have as much put together as we can, give it to the mayor. Here it is. Here's what,
Well, it's not actually going to council yet. It would just be meeting with the mayor to get his feedback, and maybe his feedback would be valuable as far as the mapping of this as well. So maybe this could all be considered
part of the
before
discussion.
giving this is exactly what we want. We don't know what we want yet.
Let me say this too, there's nothing in our document, John, that defines any boundary anywhere.
Right.
Nothing. It just says, this gives us the legal ability to do that in the future. So I don't see that question coming up from the stakeholders at this point, including the mayor. If it did come up, we'd just say this. We intend to have a very comprehensive discussion about issues of boundary. And I think we do it. We said last time that we want that to be an agenda item.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big deal. I mean,
Yeah, it's
it's
gonna
going
be
to
a big
take a
deal,
while
yeah.
to,
But I think I continue to think it's a separate issue from the one we're focusing on now. Others?
okay?
Well, I mean, the
Well-
last go around, it was an issue though, right? Because people in Boomtown were most upset and downtown, so I guess it is sort of something that will get the rise out of people.
We hope in a
Well,
good way.
They thought that they were gonna be, I think they thought that if the thing passed, the rules were gonna go into effect. And that's not true. Right?
Well,
I
that's,
don't think in 14 we made it clear enough that all this is enabling legislation. Confused it with the guidelines that made it seem like it was more than it was, blah, 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 blah. So I think if we do a decent job this time of making that point clear, then we shouldn't be getting any more questions from the Boomtown or Main Street people than we would otherwise, except that they're the areas of the historic parts of the city. So of course, they're gonna have questions.
As a downtown business building, I would want to, how's it going to affect me? And at me, done, is my building going to be included? What are the standards that I'm going to have to meet? This is,
Okay, the standards will be here. We can answer that,
but that means.
but we
that
can't
we're-
answer
yeah.
now whether you'll be in it.
And so I think if I understand where Heather's coming from, I can see where that would come up again myself, that, wait a minute, is this gonna apply to me and what's it gonna mean to me? Okay, and whether the PLG is passed or not, I'm gonna tend to look at the
Yeah.
the whole document.
and it's true that this will be a public meeting. It will not, if we do it the way I was proposing. So we could have some guests, either in person or tuning in. So we do need to think about that.
Well, I think that would mean, if we do that, it would mean pausing on meetings with stakeholder groups and digging into that issue before we do. Right, if we need those kinds of answers before we start talking with the mayor, et cetera, then
I think we know where the mayor stands, but I think we need to get him involved. I would like to see him involved sooner
okay,
rather
I
than
shouldn't have said
later.
the mayor, okay, we could, but stakeholder, larger stakeholder, we'd have to delay until we got
Right.
on top of complicated issues.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's in the minutes. Okay.
Okay, so Heather, shall we proceed with that plan to invite the mayor for the next meeting? Is that?
It's your meeting. I just have to, advertise it clearly and
You.
with a
will do-
purpose and an
you'll do that
agenda
for us?
and,
Okay,
and make sure we're able to broadcast it.
That to me makes sense to involve them now. Okay, this is where we're at. We have questions about the exact bound. And try to get people on board, at least within the administration.
right.
Same page.
Yeah, and I think that gives us a chance to share this document with the mayor at this point for a preview before it goes to the council. And
I think, we can't make assumptions. All those folks are available on this time for the next meeting, so something to think about.
Yeah.
Even just to understand the CLG process. Is the actual steps, like, for the mayor he probably knows that.
we're still trying to figure it out.
Because it's sort of like, there's like,
Complicated.
that's the thing that I get confused is process.
Yeah,
Sort of like with the CLG process, if part of it is the ordinance has to be approved, and we probably don't have to, hard to tell whether a bunch of stakeholders would need to be met with before that. I mean, like, it's a time frame as to when would it even be started to do the appropriateness, the COGs, certificates, like when would actually start, and that's part of, like, I was thinking of adding on your goal to even, it's like the process of this COAs, like the actual process, like that, do they do a physical application? Is it going to Heather, or where's it going, like step by step as to?
we had that mapped out at some point, right? Didn't we have a route? Maybe you prepared that for us. Maybe we should look that up and share that again.
I think there was a flow chart.
Yeah,
Is even seeing if part of it, say, like with the mayor as to what, I think just, it'd be interesting to hear his thoughts on the thoroughness of the ordinance and if sees any errors that could create problems. When I chaired the sign committee years ago, and I think what helped there was when we had the hearing one time at the library, and there was quite a few opponents, and we invited them to be stakeholders, basically. Al Green, he was actually served on the committee then. We got like a business's viewpoint.
mhm.
So sort of like having those kinds of hearings where you hear objections or whatever, and then you have that person maybe help if it's, whether it's a subcommittee or something, other get-togethers, that you get their input on parts of the ordinance, or
Yeah. Good idea.
because that seemed to help. We had quite a few opponents on the committee. Got good input from them.
Mhm.
And then they kind of were like, they had buy-in because they were part of the actual making the document. But it'd be interesting just right for now, just to hear what the mayor's thoughts are on the actual ordinance.
Okay, so we've agreed we'll invite the mayor, Lori, and Joe. Maybe we won't get them all, but if we officially invite them, at least, I think that's a good faith thing to do.
Could we come up with, besides our regular meeting date, maybe an alternative date if the mayor's not available? You want to look at dates right now while we're talking about it? Our next regular meeting would be the last Friday of October. Is that correct?
I have written down October 23rd.
That would be the 4th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So are we all available for that meeting
Could be.
at 3 o'clock? So let's shoot for that with the invitation to the mayor. And if that cannot work, I don't know,
Following Friday?
the 30th?
If Fridays don't work, they could let us know and we could look
Yeah.
at another day of the week.
But we could give them both of those Fridays.
Yeah, neither one work, we could look at another.
Good.
And then the goal, so I understand this, right? Myself, be to have them have all the paperwork. Get their feedback, what they feel is good, bad, and change. Look and see if these boundaries, what their thoughts are.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly like Will's suggestion, idea. Get the people in.
It worked. I mean, we had a hearing.
Yeah.
There's a public hearing at the library and it was on the sign ordinance. And we had quite a few in the audience. Now we had quite a few come up, and Al Green got up, and there was a couple, can't think of his name, it was one of the faculty. I can't even think of names now, but he got up and was concerned about it. Then afterwards, we asked him about being on the committee. So maybe even to get a subgroup to hear from. You know,
I think that's what we're aiming at here.
Yeah.
We're starting with the mayor, but our aim is to meet with stakeholder groups, and the realtors,
Yeah.
the property owners would be one of the groups, downtown business owners would either be part of that group or a separate group. I mean, we'll have to define how many.
I think the mayor even would be, for what can we do to help with the CLG process? Because he's, the mayor and the council would be the ones that are instrumental in
Right.
getting things from us that they need to do the CLG application.
And I think we need reassurance. I think we will have it that Mike is in favor. We know that Dick Edwards was pushing this really hard. And I don't sense that it's changed, but what we don't know is how the council might feel, or if they have any temperature from the council as far as how this might proceed successfully through their chambers.
I think that's the next step. I think, remember the mayor made a point of telling us that somebody ought to talk to Hollenbaugh soon. I think that meant that there might be some territoriality issues, and that we
Either.
should make sure that we're treating council as just as important. So I think even before the meeting with the mayor, that somebody, Gail maybe, or her appointee, or no more than two of us, so it's not a meeting, should meet with Hollenbaugh, just informally saying, this
What-
is coming,
Being developed and
you know, here, we can give him the stuff too, say, this is what's coming, and we'd like your advice, and whether we can have an information meeting with all council members, in which we're not, there's no issue of taking votes, it's just an information session. I think it would be really wise to get
patient for input.
president of council involved in this now, very soon.
Would you be comfortable of doing that with Gail?
Sure.
As
Yeah.
a person that knows intimately our document?
Sure, if that's agreeable with everybody here.
Good.
Fine with that.
So we'll have to make contact with Gail about this, of course, and I assume this weekend isn't a good time to do it. Okay,
Well, then,
Great.
after that, it's, they would follow then, hopefully some kind of informal meetings with council and the planning commission, and then somebody will need to define stakeholder groups, which ones are the critical ones, which ones we really need to get together with, do the same kind of thing. Basically, we'll be lobbying, right? John, in addition to
Yeah.
answering questions,
It's-
we'll kind of be
yeah.
lobbying
Absolutely.
for what we're
It's sort
doing.
of like, to me, I look at it as like the people benefit from us doing this. I mean, that's the main thing. It's like we need to make it so like with suggestions, whether it's architectural features or things, but something so they understand that it's not restrictive. You know, it's more of a thing to help
Yeah,
historic districts and the buildings and make them more
Absolutely.
showcase them. And
Is it possible to find out who building owners downtown are?
Yeah, the auditor's website, anybody can go on the auditor website.
Okay.
okay, what about asking Gail, because in a sense, this is public engagement,
Mhm.
and she's in charge of that, asking Gail to be responsible for defining the stakeholder groups that we need to meet with and to begin planning for possible times when we might meet with them. That seem,
I vote for that.
okay, I will ask her to.
Good.
Uh,
I'm not sure we can go much farther with those kind of details right now.
No, I don't think we can either. I think that requires one or two people just sitting and thinking it through.
Yeah. So let's move to updating of goals. Any additions on that?
Well, first of all, public engagement plan, just update since Gail's not here,
Right.
then we just pass on that,
Right.
okay? For the minutes.
Yes.
Okay. Updating goals.
I think we have our short-term goals, and we know what our long-term goal is. Getting this thing passed.
Right, well, here's the draft of a revision of what we approved, a revision of what we approved last year. The one that's called
Oh, yeah.
projected goals and plans for
Right.
2020 following.
item 9 there, building inventories, identifying research. It's like even looking at what process, like, would we use? Is there, what exists?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
What exists and what kind of data would we collect on it?
Yeah, we're gonna have to, but I think to get help with the process there too.
I think, and then I was going to add a 13th one, that says develop a certificate of appropriateness application / approval process. In other words, there's another process
Yeah,
to
that's a
determine.
good
is that
point.
what are the actual steps that someone takes? And there was a couple things in the forget where it was referenced, and it might have been in the actual ordinance where it talked about like HPC members would be able to help. It seemed to me like the idea of just, it should be the HPC, you know, versus, in other words, there needs to be a process as someone, if they came with a question, like who did they go to? Did they go to Gail
Right.
first and,
Right.
or could they go to Les and get an, it seemed like it needed to be, I was going to do away with the word members. In other words, it'd be just HPC. And within it would be a process as to whether,
We need the process. The
Yeah.
thing you're referring to, Will, all it says is that members can give information about process.
okay. I didn't want to say like, well, then they could go to a member to get.
No, then no negotiating with
get
members.
a-
That would
yeah.
be terrible.
Yeah.
But, okay, yeah, so I think we should add a 13.
Just
Hopefully, maybe we can get to that sometime before spring of 2021. Let's
start
put it
thinking
there
about like
anyway.
what the actual steps would be for the. And something like that, even would probably be looking at like Perrysburg or someplace that already has it.
Here's it spelled out.
Has it? Okay, look at.
We just were up in Perrysburg, one of my rare ventures away from my house the last 6 months. But we did a little walk along the riverside, and it's really a beautiful area. And they have in their downtown, and you guys, I'm sure know this, little plaques talking about the historic area that we were seeing, different buildings in front of some of the stores. which down the road would be something we really could think about. That's far in the distance, but it really, I thought, added to the charm of the
I
city.
think that's kind of like what we're doing. what we
Yeah.
need to do.
Yeah.
I think any way to help,
Right.
good.
Any other additions to the goals? We can keep expanding this, keep expanding this over the next several meetings, I'm sure.
Great.
But this is a great list to have.
Okay, so do you want to just leave it as an informal guidance document, or do you want to approve it as a set of
Uh-huh.
goals and plans?
What's our pleasure?
Informal's fine.
Keep
I
it
think-
informal?
I think
Okay.
it's a good list that
Yeah.
was put together.
Great. The building inventories is a big, big issue. We did talk about that a little bit in past meetings, and I think we were hoping to encourage owners of homes and buildings to create their own inventory. I don't know that that's the only or best way, but that's about as far as that I remember that we got on that one. Any other thoughts about that?
You got to start like with the ones that are actually on the National Historic. There's some that have been established. What zone they're in or doesn't matter right now, but I mean, there are some that's sort of like a good beginning.
Yeah.
That could become the first, because we have 0 listed properties right now. We're starting at
Correct.
0.
Yep.
So those could be the first ones to
Yeah.
get on our listed properties would be, and I guess then it gets down to whether they nominate themselves or want to vote. I don't get into that,
Right.
but that to me is a start. We've got some,
That's it?
and we could kind of look at the data that they got, like they had to submit to get that status.
Actually, there are 2 things involved here. One is that one that you're talking about, what our goal presumably to start with the existing information that we have. The other is that the state requirement is that historic preservation commissions have a responsibility for developing an inventory of all historic properties in the municipality. So longer run, we should be doing everything, at least all of the historic stuff. But we still need we need a process for both. And we don't really know what that process is yet. We know that the, what is it called? The library, the BGSU library has the archive. The archive have some information, I think, about what was done. Presumably, representatives of Boontown and Main Street must somewhere have some records of what was done. So those are kind of starting places.
Yeah, I think we perhaps need an entire meeting just to brainstorm that one and come up with strategies. And maybe do some research on how other communities have gone about that problem. Starting there.
Otherwise, we need to continue it as an agenda item. Don't know exactly when we're going
Yeah.
to get to it.
Right,
Not in October, because we already have
right.
an agenda.
At
for
least,
October.
a couple months away. Good. Any other business?
I have one thing that I'd like to bring up. Okay, there's no lobby visitation because nobody came. And we've already agreed on next meeting. I'm writing notes, sorry.
Fine.
Either October 23rd or 30th. with mayor, et cetera. John raised something that surprised me before the meeting started. He got a hold of a set of design guidelines from Perrysburg. So this is just sort of informal at this point. And I thought we clarified that Perrysburg does not have its own guidelines. Now I'm confused. Now he's got them. He's got a set of,
Does it have
So-
pictures of buildings and things and features and are they copied from the secretaries, do you think? Because they may have taken them.
Welcome to them. The reason I even contacted them was because when I first came to this, my thought was any variation. National Night, putting flag, don't vary. And
So
Heather,
literally-
I do listen to you. Heather said, you know, the more specific you are, easier it is down the road. And so that got me, looked at this. It is very specific. How to apply for a certificate, acceptable with not acceptable.
But those wouldn't be design guidelines. I mean, the process is probably,
Yeah.
because to me, the design guidelines, I'm looking, say, architectural features.
But
like,
this,
but it
this,
looks like that's
this
what they've
covers
got in here.
everything.
This
This-
is a surprise to me.
this covers everything from A to Z. Even plain architectural features, but you could keep. Important. It helped me with understanding. Also scares me. It is so. Share with you, one of the things that the member mentioned to me was that they only have wood-clad windows. They prefer that on the inside that would. That's one of the things. Oh, man, I don't. want to route it on. They can provide
Yeah.
instruction.
Okay, so there are a couple of issues here, a lot of issues. But one of them is, you know, what is Perrysburg really doing? Because I thought that in the document that Heather gave us a copy of that sort of describes the ordinance, maybe it was the ordinance, that it says specifically that they were using the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines. That was it. So that's why I'm surprised. The other is, remember that at least the way we're defining guidelines is they're not rules, they're not regulations. They're not standards. They're just, if you come to us and you
Yes.
need a COA, and we start talking about what's appropriate, here are the guidelines that we follow as an HPC, and we hope you will follow as owner.
But-
They're guidelines, not rules.
Well, you could look at the secretaries and go into some, you know,
Oh, and the secretaries is just full of this kind of stuff. I mean, it's,
they have like, because they go in there and even talk about not using varnish because it wasn't historical. I thought, wow, that's for with stains.
it's a hard row. If we have to go that route, it's a hard road. And I'm not gonna do it. I mean,
Well, it seems like you could be
lead
suggestive,
on it.
because they're showing some photos of, here's some nice looking doors, or here's some nice ventilation under a porch and things, so some guidelines could be developed in the future, like on suggestions, but
I just don't see why we need to reinvent what already exists.
Yeah,
in
it
the
exists.
Secretary, separate from the standards for each section, preservation, rehabilitation, restoration, reconstruction. There's an enormous set of guidelines as suggestions. If you're replacing a door, here are the best ways to do it. If you're replacing windows, here are the best ways to do it, et cetera.
this is new to me.
Right.
Say, other comment last about this. That's why I'm comfortable with what's going on myself, and I think there's a level of guidance, level of knowledge, looking, but we're not saying this is what you got.
Controlling.
Period.
Yeah,
I just don't think we can get it past him.
I don't think you will
no,
either.
we don't.
So I think we need to be really careful
So
about
I-
that. But I would love to have those kind of pictures, you know, if I'm fixing up my, my living room or my window bedroom, just, you know, to know how it probably looked historically. So we may get to a point where we provide those kind of suggestions about wiring. Sounds like they're
Like
requiring-
education, sort of like education.
Yeah.
I don't know,
I
maybe,
think we
John, if you can take the time to do this, it would be worthwhile getting on that website that's listed in the ordinance somewhere and look at what the Secretary of the Interior guidelines look like.
I've looked
You
at
could
some,
compare them, what Harrisburg's done.
I will, and like I said, I'm new, but it seems to me that everything yes,
We say it specifically in the ordinance.
and I think it's important across. My concern was look at this, there's here or they cross over that. I think that's real. I'm comfortable with that.
Doing a set at all is, because we lost.
I say, I'm just trying to get as much
Sorry,
information as I
trying
can.
to be so serious about this, I just,
I'm happy.
Good, thank you for showing us that,
Yeah,
that's
I think
great.
good.
Okay, I think we're at 4:30 and it's time to go home.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, second, we have a second? Thank you very much.
turned at